Priorities USA Communications Director Josh Schwerin, The Hill columnist Kristin Tate, and American Conservative Union Chairman Matt Schlapp. Great to have all of you with us.
Great to be with you.
Okay, so Senator Harris, she says this: we are on the verge of a crisis of confidence in the Supreme Court. We have to take this challenge head on, and everything is on the table to do that. Matt.
Yeah, this is just appalling. The fact is you have to win elections and you have to get a majority in the United States Senate in order to start impacting the Supreme Court. Republicans had a majority and they had the ability to block Merrick Garland in an election year. Republicans have increased their majority after the fight for Gorsuch and Kavanaugh. The American people have spoken. They like a Republican majority in the Senate, and they like what we're doing on judges. Almost everything Elizabeth Warren said about the history of the Supreme Court is untrue. The reason why the filibuster rule was changed is because the Democrats, for the first time in our history, decided to start using the filibuster to stop a Republican Supreme Court nominee.
All right, Ed Morrissey writes this. He says, so why wait on this terrible idea? Let's do it now.
Right.
Donald Trump should announce that he has nominated 6 justices to the Supreme Court to expand it to 15 seats. With a 53-seat majority in the Senate, Mitch McConnell could get them all confirmed by the end of the summer at the latest. Josh, why not? If it's such a great idea.
If it's such a terrible idea, why float it? I think this is hypocrisy at its best. Ted Cruz was willing to cut the number of justices just 2 years ago when he thought Hillary Clinton was going to be president. Republicans are not consistent on this. Democrats don't all agree that this is a good thing to do. There's going to be a debate in the primary. But what it is a debate about how we can actually get things done. And to Matt's point, none of this can happen without Democrats winning the presidency and the Senate. So that is part of the plan that they are proposing. But yeah, let's have a debate about this. It's not unprecedented. It is something that if you're running for president, you have to say what you're going to do and how you're going to accomplish it. This is one idea. As we're seeing, candidates have a lot of ideas. They don't all agree with this, but it's going to be good to have a debate. And some Republicans have supported changing the number in the past. It's changed several times over our history. So let's talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, Article 3 of the Constitution doesn't provide a number, but it says that Congress can set it. It was at 6, but I think all the tie votes, eventually they decided that probably was not going to work. And originally, the Founding Fathers, I don't think, ever thought the court would be leaned upon so heavily and so often as it is right now to solve all these issues, which hence is maybe why it started out with an even number. But it has been changed a number of times, 7 times, I think, over the years, but not in 150 years. Kristin, I want to read something from the Outline.com. The headline on this: there is only one way to fix the Supreme Court. The author says Gorsuch's appointment alone justifies this packing idea. In shifting the court from a potential 5-4 liberal majority to a 5-4 conservative majority, the Republicans effectively stole 2 votes. So increasing the court size to 11 justices would merely rebalance what was taken. Kristin.
I mean, to me, this is just another effort by Democrats to try and discredit an institution that they can't control. They've been attacking the Electoral College ever since Bush beat Gore in 2000. Their criticisms of Donald Trump have gone far beyond just political criticisms to an actual onslaught on the institution of the presidency, and now the Supreme Court is in the crosshairs. These liberals say that they want to expand the court because the judicial appointment system has become too politicized, but court packing would make the Supreme Court a lot more politicized and a lot more weaponized. Court packing essentially makes the judiciary a tool of whatever political forces happen to be in power at that given moment. It's the kind of thing that dictators do, and it's a game that 2 can play. If there's a resurgence in the Democratic Party and they want to expand the court by giving their president the right to fill, say, 6 new seats during the next Republican cycle, you can bet the same thing is going to happen. But the most important thing here is that I think court packing really kind of destroys the independence of the court. It's so important here that in this country, with this republic that we have an independent judiciary to protect our constitutional rights.
Okay, so listen, I need you guys to stick around. It's an interesting point that you make about this back and forth and what would happen if the Dems do it, do the Republicans do it. People on both sides of the aisle are warning tonight. If one party does it, the other is going to be certainly motivated to do it as well. But we have another hot topic for you, panel, so please stick around for that. Paid whether you go to work or not. It's called Universal Basic Income, and it is one step closer to becoming a reality in New Jersey's largest city. Maybe some more places, too.
We believe in universal basic income. Martin Luther King believed in universal basic income.
Do you know actually what the price tag would be, paying every American $1,000 a month?
Yeah, it's about $1.8 trillion a year past current expenses. But the way you get there, Joe, and we all know this, how much did Amazon pay in taxes last year? 0.
All right, that is 2020 Democratic contender Andrew Yang talking about this idea. Josh, Kristin, and Matt rejoin us to discuss. And by the way, another estimate put that at $2.8 trillion a year to pay people $1,000 a year if they're 18 or over, whether they were, or $1,000 a month, whether they work or not. So let's talk about this. Welcome back, you guys. I found it very interesting that Gallup polled on this recently, and they talked about people being forced out of the labor force because of automated intelligence, artificial intelligence. There is such a party split on this about whether or not there should be this universal basic income. You can see it right there. Democrats and Republicans are absolutely opposite on this. Kristin, why do you think that this is a partisan issue?
Well, for too long, Democrats have been pushing proposals that literally pay people not to work, and this is one of them. And I find it interesting that the mayor of Newark in New Jersey is proposing UBI, even though he himself has no plans for how to pay for it just in his own city. And these kinds of plans have already failed around the world. Ontario abandoned their UBI program after lawmakers found that it wasn't sustainable. Finland did the same. Meanwhile, in New Jersey, where this mayor is, they've been having an exodus out of the state by high and middle income earners who are fed up with the high taxes and costs of living. UBI would just make taxes go up even more. So if this mayor wants to make life better in his city, he would put in place policies that encourage growth and attract good jobs, not recycle a failed policy that just encourages people to be dependent on the government.
Well, and you mentioned Finland. They tried this for a couple of years. They've now discontinued it, but here's what they said. The BBC did a report on how this all turned out. The headline is Finland basic income trial left people happier, I bet, but jobless. It says, did it help unemployed people in Finland find jobs? No, not really. While some individuals found work, they were no more likely to do so than a control group of people who weren't given the money. Josh?
This is a policy that, yes, you would have to figure out how to pay for it, but also it's driven by a sense of the need to help people who are living in poverty. More than a quarter of the city of Newark lives in poverty below the poverty line right now. So you know what? They're going to do an experiment and see if it works. There have been experiments in New Jersey on universal basic income before. In the 1960s, Dick Cheney and Don Rumsfeld actually ran one, and the results showed that it could work. So Democrats are split on sort of whether this is a good national policy. But in terms of localizing it, the state of Alaska pays people $2,000 a year to live there. It can be done. They can test it, let them see if it works, and if it doesn't, they won't do it. But I don't think it's like the second coming of socialism to say we want to help people who need help.
Okay, thebalance.com writes this. It says an unconditional basic income would enable workers to wait for a better job or to negotiate better wages. They could improve their marketability by going back to school. They can even quit their job to care for a relative. Matt, what's the downside for you?
Well, first of all, we have almost like a million extra jobs in this economy, this Trump economy, that we can't fill with employees. And now what these socialists want to do is take even more Americans out of the workforce. Let's face it, we have a minimum standard wage in so many ways. It is very easy to get on government programs. There's more government programs than you can even imagine. In the last 8 years of Obama, you had all types of programs that ballooned. And what I would like to see us do is actually get the American people to a position where they can get these jobs that are going unfilled and have options for their families. And instead, the Democrats, drive to socialism. Even the socialist countries of Europe, you brought up Finland and Sweden and these other countries, they are moving away from these big, stupid programs because guess what? This minimum idea of a minimum income has never worked anywhere. You want to bring up Alaska? That's absurd. That's because they're sitting on all these oil reserves. I don't think that's exactly what's happening in Newark, New Jersey.
Well, Josh, what about that idea that Finland said it didn't make people any better at being able to have a cushion to go find a job? I mean, it didn't change their employment status, but yeah, as I was kind of chuckling about, they did report that they were happier. I mean, it's got to be less stress involved when you feel like, all right, I've got some kind of safety net.
When you have 27% of your major city population living below the poverty line, I think your first step is to make sure that people aren't dying in the streets, that they have something to live on. And you know what? I don't blame a mayor for wanting to get creative about how he does that. Is this the only solution to the problem? No. And I hope they're doing other things. But I don't blame him for wanting to try something to say, look at this big chunk of my population who can't afford to put food on the table and and they can't afford to send
But that 27% is not indicative of the fact that they all are getting assistance from the federal government. 27%.
And clearly it's not working. If
That's
whatever
not true.
whatever the government is doing
No,
is
the
not
government
working.
can't solve all these problems.
Let me bring Kristin in here. I mean, Josh mentioned dying in the streets.
Well, one reason there's so much poverty in places like New Jersey is increasingly businesses and corporations want nothing to do with New Jersey. Their corporate taxes are insane. Their income taxes are insane. So high earners and businesses pack up and go to greener pastures like Florida. This is happening not just in New Jersey, by the way, but in California and New York as well. So if this mayor wants to make life better, he can put in place policies to attract
You're
businesses.
absolutely right. Those states do have high. Those states do have high taxes. And they were actually made worse by the president's tax bill. And that's why congressional Republicans lost so many seats in those states.
Because of state and local taxes.
Because they can no longer
There is
deduct
that
them.
combination of state and local taxes along with the federal bill as well. Okay, we got to leave it there.
Let's blame Trump for everything.
This one's true.
Okay.
Blame him for everything.
We're not gonna kumbaya on this panel, but we thank you all for being here, Josh, Kristin, and Matt. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Shannon.